Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Edwards. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Bloomberg, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Cornell Tech at Bloomberg Speaker Series. We launched a series last month and received great response from the technical community in New York City, entrepreneurs, investors, thinkers from the global tech environment, and of course, students. One thing that probably resonates with this audience, full of founders and future founders, is that Bloomberg is the most successful tech startup in New York City history. And what's probably even more interesting at this point is how we stayed so successful after all of these years. One of the reasons is that we have resisted becoming a large bureaucratic company. Instead, we are more like a bunch of really funded startups within one large company. We kept this obsessive focus on delivering products to our customers, solving their customers' problems, and being first to market. And of course, all these semi-independent little departments or companies share an incredible technology stack. Now, we have a strong connection with Cornell Tech. From the inception of the Roosevelt Island campus during the Bloomberg administration, to Mike's generous philanthropic gift to start the buildings, and also having Tom Secunda, who was a co-founder of the company, sit on the board of Cornell Tech. So with that, it's a great pleasure to host you tonight. I'm looking forward to a compelling conversation with tonight's Cornell Tech at Bloomberg guest, Brad Keywell. Now, our guest tonight is first and foremost a tech entrepreneur. Brad is the co-founder and CEO of Uptake Technologies and the co-founder and managing partner of Lightbank, a venture fund investing in disruptive technology businesses. He's an investor in other successful startups and is perhaps best known as being a co-founder and director of Groupon. Brad is also an adjunct professor at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, where he teaches a course on entrepreneurship and disruptive technology. Our interviewer tonight is our own Bloomberg's own Tom Giles. Tom recently became executive editor of Bloomberg's newly formed global technology team, working with Brad Stone to expand our coverage of the interaction of business and technology around the world. So please give a warm welcome to Brad and Tom.
Brad, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
To all of you, we're glad you're here. I'd like to start out talking a little bit about Lightbank. Talking about Uptake first, and then we're going to turn to Lightbank. Uptake, you reached a very important milestone, very notable milestone, a few months back, and somewhat rare for startups that are based in Chicago. So tell us a little bit about what that milestone was, and kind of give us an overview of how you brought the company that far.
Well, why don't I start with what Uptake is? That would be the framing of the conversation. Uptake is a software platform that delivers value to companies in global industries. And we deliver value by taking data from sensors off of assets and from other correlative sources of data. And we deliver predictive insight. So it's a subscription software platform in major industries like construction, rail, mining, energy, oil and gas.
So these sensors would be attached to, for example, trains?
Correct. So there'd be, on an average train, there's 250 plus sensors. That train's going from New York to LA, spitting off data every second. The reading of that data, the listening to that data, provides three sources of really high value for the industries that are global in nature. One source of value is optimizing performance. So optimizing the speed of a train is a multi-$100 million, often billion-dollar source of increased profitability. Minimizing or eliminating unplanned downtime, huge value if you cannot have a train breakdown in the middle of a desert. And the third is safety and regulatory compliance. So by having predictive insight around that data in real time and putting it in the hands of somebody who can do something about it, you're creating real global value.
And tell us a little bit about the genesis of the company.
So the genesis of the company was an obsession that I had over a vision that I just couldn't get away from, which was there's an evolution happening right in front of our eyes. And I've been building, my partner Eric and I have been building businesses now for 25 years. This combination of factors was irresistible. Number one is sensors are coming down in price and going up in quality, a lot like chips. The cloud is becoming commoditized so that you can store efficiently huge amounts of information. The connectivity of that sensor to the cloud is no longer just satellite, it's now cellular and other interesting ways to get data. And then the fourth thing is total revolution in data science. I mean, there's a whole rethinking of optimizing and optimal data science. Those four things combined about 4 years ago led me to see something that I really couldn't believe. And frankly, understanding what I was missing, trying to test that hypothesis over and over again led to this creation of Uptake, which by the time we created the business, it was totally focused on the mission, and that's where we are today, continuing to focus on that mission.
And so one of your key customer is Caterpillar. So to give us to kind of hit home the idea of Uptake, walk us through how Caterpillar would use your product, for example.
So Caterpillar is a partner of ours, and just to be clear, we're active in a lot of spaces, okay?
Right.
But the one partner we've announced is Caterpillar. Right. The size and scope of that partnership is such that we both decided to announce it publicly. The role of that partner in our business model is to inform and help guide the product to deliver value for the customer. The customer is the customer of Caterpillar's. So for example, the contractor who's got 10,000 construction machines, some of which are Caterpillar, some of which are other brands, that is our customer. And our product is built to derive value and expose insight to all brands of machines, not just Caterpillar. So we call it collaborative disruption. It's almost choosing to be disruptive with a partner who has a strong edge rather than what we've traditionally done, which is be disruptive from the outside. That's a more typical role for an entrepreneur, is just to go out and have an idea and go after the whole space. We think that there's an evolved opportunity in terms of the industrial internet.
And you've just completed a $45 million fundraising round, is that correct?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit about kind of what you're going to use that for and what lies ahead.
We are looking at a very unique opportunity in that we are entrepreneurial, first and foremost. We are fast, we are decisive, we don't worry about failing as long as we can correct quick, and we're focused on building product, building a software platform that delivers insight. That is extraordinary when you lay that skill set over major industries that have global presence. And so while we are cash flow positive, there's value to plentiful capital, and that's always been an asset, I think, of great entrepreneurs, is building plentiful capital so that when opportunities arise, you're ready.
Going forward, where do you see Uptake a year from now? What will be different? What are some of the milestones that we would be talking, if you're back next year, what are some milestones we might be talking about?
You will see Uptake growing in terms of number of verticals. You'll see us more visible in the marketplace of these verticals. You'll see a true demonstration of what speed looks like. I think that in the space that we play, there's a lot of big companies that tend to move slow. I think you'll see what speed, the value of speed, and you'll see a larger company. I think I don't measure companies by number of people. In fact, some of the great companies are not hiring for the sake of hiring. But I will say that the elite team that we are building in Chicago is getting even stronger. It's just we've been able to create a culture, a real deep culture of curiosity, flexibility, collaboration, and what that culture has done is attracted a lot of amazing people who see the uniqueness of what we're creating and want to join. So trying to, bridging that gap between entrepreneurship and big iconic companies so that together you can win, you're going to see more of that. That's what you're going to see.
Okay, we refer to people like you as serial entrepreneurs. And a lot of times you'll work with a company for a while, you'll get it off the ground and move on. So there's been sort of, my question is, do you expect that you'll be sticking around longer, working more closely with Uptake than you have with past companies?
100%. This is a different story. I mean, this is, there's no apologies for any, look, I think a good entrepreneur is very clear about what they're good and not good at. I would tell you that uptake is something that is uniquely, my skill set and this opportunity they're like this. And so this is a really extraordinary company.
Who do you see disrupting most if it works as planned? Where, kind of this thing we refer to as IoT, Internet of Things. Who do you see kind of potentially disrupting the most?
It's not so much to me, disruption comes in many shapes and flavors. So disruption in this case is about unlocking what currently is locked. So, for example, there are oil rigs that produce data that are using 1% of that data. So who am I disrupting? I'm disrupting, I don't know, blind spots. I'm making visible things that are not now visible. So from a disruptive standpoint, the real disruption is that our partners in these verticals like Caterpillar are our allies. And so we are disrupting most the competitors of our partner because we are creating and providing a source of predictive insight that does power, will power their machines. And so that really is the goal of Uptake, is not so much, we collaborate with our partners, but our customers are the end users, and they're the ones who need this value through that's derived from insight.
How are you striking a balance between your responsibilities at Uptake and your work with Lightbank, the venture capital firm that you also co-founded?
So Lightbank is an investment fund, and part of the nature of what we created with Lightbank is that there really are it's not like we've got a big pool of limited partners. So it's the majority, it's our own money, so we are not operating under a mandate that would feel like a more traditional, typical venture capital firm. And we've built a business called Lightbank. So we have a team of people that run this investment fund that we've created. So Eric and I are in a position where we've started a number of businesses and we've invested in even more. And really, my total focus is on Uptake.
Okay.
And while I sit on the board of Groupon and Echo and other companies, we have the good fortune that we've got really strong management teams really across the board. And really that's obviously the job of a director, to make sure that the management team is the right management team, make sure they're focused on the right metrics, and if there are issues, help. But really the goal is to help oversee. And so that is obviously manageable and integrated into the fact that my full-time job is CEO of Uptake.
Okay. And now, when you raised that fundraising round, your valuation was reported at north of $1 billion. A little bit of a rarity to have a company, a startup that big. We call them unicorns, or some people call them unicorns, that are based in Chicago. Why do you think that is? There's been a lot of hand-wringing recently over the situation facing startups and the venture capital scene in Chicago.
Why do I think that I'm explicitly not commenting on the valuation, but at the same time, why are there not more sort of high-valued startups in Chicago?
Yeah.
There will be more as time goes on. I think that there are elements to a great ecosystem that you guys have here in New York that really exist out in the Valley, that other cities like Chicago are developing. And by the way, this Cornell, what is happening right here, what we're a part of with this conversation, is very important and special. And I wish that we in Chicago had more of this. The combination of venture capital, entrepreneurs, big companies, a little bit of government, and a lot of education. Those 5 things get together, and you've got an ecosystem. And that's on display in spades out in the Valley and San Francisco. So New York is New York's the greatest city in the world. I love Chicago, but there's nothing like New York. And so we in Chicago have a unique set of strengths. One of them, I believe, is a work ethic that's phenomenal. Another one is a very livable city, I would say the most. And the third is a very hard to sort of quantify, but there's a connection to the core industries that run this country. In the case of Uptake, we're taking advantage of the proximity to the businesses that are uniquely iconic in American industry. So I think smart, my opinion is that there's an entrepreneurial opportunity around finding opportunities that are aligned with a type of industry in different geographies. And so there can be a great ecosystem in Atlanta if people figure out what's uniquely great about that part of the country. So we're doing our best.
Why do you think it's taken till now or till recently? Why is that? I mean, you've got engineering talent at the University of Illinois and all kinds of schools across the Midwest, for just as one example. So why has it taken a while for Chicago to get that right combination for that ecosystem?
I think there's been a number of really successful technology companies that have been created in Chicago. So it's not like it's just happening now. Now, from a volume standpoint, there's just a unique ecosystem in the Valley. And sadly, a lot of great technologists historically from U of I have gone west. Mark Andreessen being
leading the charge.
Yeah, so we have, we being Chicago, are getting there. I mean, it's still, there's plenty of time. I think that the important thing is, are you going up or down? Is there a recognition of the need to accept failure? Is there a playground being created, a space for risk takers and entrepreneurs so that they can be comfortable culturally in a city? And the answer is yes in Chicago. So that culture of openness, of transparency, of technology is well beyond the tipping point. Now the question is, what comes of it? What businesses are created because we've got the cultural sort of foundation to do something with it?
You alluded to the role of government. What role do you see the government playing or not playing, as the case may be, in the case of Chicago versus, say, what you have in California or what you have had in New York City? In particular, Rahm Emanuel has talked about the need for fostering greater entrepreneurship, fostering more of a sense of a venture capital ecosystem in Chicago. And I'm wondering to what extent you feel he's been able to deliver on that.
I think Rahm's doing everything he can, given the limited budget that our city of Chicago has. It's a city with financial structural challenges. I think that, forgive me for the reference, but there's nobody like Mike Bloomberg who in terms of a government leader who has fostered a spirit of entrepreneurship and become a coordinator, cheerleader, sort of highlight pointer outer, and an enabler like Mike. And it's not about money necessarily. It's about creating the conditions where disruption, where technology can be created, where great things can happen. And so it's almost like you need a chief cheerleader who truly understands the power of technology. And Mike Bloomberg was able to articulate as mayor how important technology and a creative, risk-taking entrepreneurial ecosystem is to a great city. And so Rahm, I think, is doing the best he can. He's really going above and beyond in terms of being a cheerleader, although there's always more you can do.
How much are the questions about how he's handled some of the police issues in the city kind of making it his challenge a little bit harder, making the hurdle just a little bit higher to enable him to really devote himself to the cause of building kind of an entrepreneurial ecosystem?
I am explicitly not involved in politics, so no, not even going there.
Do you? We talked about this term unicorns, which I think is overused, and I'm at risk of perpetuating that by by saying it. But I mean, there are so many more companies that are private but highly valued, that have high valuations. They're staying private longer. There's been a lot of things that have been widely talked about that have kind of fostered this. I just wonder, how unique do you think we are? How unique do you think this period in history is, where we have so many companies staying private for so long? Do you see that lasting?
I think there's a more educated group of people who are looking at options regarding financing a growth company and understanding those options better. So there's less cliche milestone value to some of these things, number one. Number two is, whatever the valuation, whatever the financing event is, private, public, I'm focused on creating value. What I've learned in 25 years of helping and being part of building businesses is, if you create value that provides your customer tangible, serious value, you've got a great business on your hands. And the best thing to do is focus on expanding that moat, expanding the advantages that you have, however you've created them. And so to the extent anything's a distraction from that, it's not good for an entrepreneur. To the extent it facilitates the expansion of that competitive moat, it's an asset to the entrepreneur. So I think there's a better, more educated set of facts, a more educated set of entrepreneurs, better set of facts around pluses and minuses of different choices, and it's creating a new set of decisions, which is going to keep evolving. I'm fascinated by it. I mean, I'm a student of, I love this stuff. I love it. I love what I do. I love the entrepreneurial playground that is America. And we're watching people evolve in a great way to be smarter entrepreneurs, better risk takers. That, to me, is what this is all about.
But do you feel, as an investor and a founder, that a lot of the valuations have kind of gotten ahead of themselves right now?
It's hard to say. If there's anything I would say that is overdone, it's generalizations about things like valuations. I think that it's very hard to say, here's 100 or what plus companies, thematically they all are good, bad, or otherwise. But clearly, look, I mean, every day, as Warren Buffett tells you, the market gives you a softball, gives you a pitch up the strike zone, or gives you stuff that you shouldn't even touch. And so just like, public markets, private markets, some companies are undervalued, some are overvalued. That's the role of investors, venture capital, private equity, or otherwise, is assessing risk, quantifying reward, and making, and taking action. To me, it's fascinating.
Just to close the loop on the Chicago question, hiring can be a challenge for really any startup anywhere. Even in Silicon Valley, we hear about some of the challenges they face finding good engineers. Can you talk a little bit about what makes the situation in Chicago even more challenging, and what makes you optimistic that tide is turning? Why, for example, if you are optimistic that more engineers are going to be willing to stay in the Chicago area and not get on the first plane to San Francisco?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's more challenging in Chicago than other cities. I happen to think that Chicago, now more than ever, has a really well-developed, well-matured community of technologists, product experts, UX experts, data scientists. We're in a great place. I think that we're in a great place. And again, it's hard to really quantify what this looks like, but there's a opportunity to build a great culture, and therefore provide a great base for talented people. That's the opportunity. So rather than the limitation, what's an opportunity? Attract even more students from the University of Illinois to stay in Chicago. And in fact, I started something called Chicago Ideas Week, and we've created with the city of Chicago a program to take the best technology students from the state of Illinois, and actually from the Midwest, bring them to Chicago every October and ask them to consider staying in the Midwest and not going east or west, no offense to New York. So we have opportunity. I look at it as the glass is half full.
Right. You remain involved with Groupon as a director. What's your assessment? I know that the new management is relatively new, but can you give us a sense so far of how you think it's doing?
Given that it's a public company and I'm a director, in terms of an immediate prognosis, I don't want to do that. What I will say is that it's a company that we are so proud of. We're proud of what we built. We're proud of the value that it's created, the customers, the people that we touch. It's really it's been a joy to create a business, be part of creating a business like Groupon. So it's really been quite special.
Has it been as joyful as it has been to create it? How has it's got to be difficult to see kind of the decline in the stock price and the need to pivot and some of the the competitive landscape that Groupon was thrust into. Can you talk a little bit about lessons from that experience that perhaps entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs or funders in the audience could take away from someone who's been there from the beginning?
Endless lessons. I mean, we learn lessons. That's I think great. Strong entrepreneurs are lesson learners. They're great lesson learners, and then their job is to not repeat the mistakes they made. So, have mistakes been made in a number of businesses that we've created? Media Ocean, which is now based here in New York, and Echo and Groupon. So, lots of lessons. The best lessons are the ones that are not easy to generalize. Who to hire, how to motivate in terms of a structural compensation that aligns company objectives with personal objectives. The importance of culture, the focus on value. I mean, these are all things that we've refined with all these different companies. And so ultimately, in the case of Groupon, the local commerce space is, I believe, still one of the great frontiers for the connected world. And so the opportunity is, Groupon, I'm proud of Groupon.
Can you talk about to drill down in one area in the international area, can you talk a little bit about what you would have done differently in terms of your expansion and how quickly you did that?
I shouldn't. So I'm a director, and it's a publicly traded company, so.
Okay. Any regrets that you can speak of?
Like I said, I'm an optimist, so I'm focused on taking all the facts you have and making the best decision possible.
Can you talk a little bit about Chicago Next and kind of where you see that going from here?
So you mean the technology board?
Right.
There are lots of government facilitated opportunities in Chicago to bring together technologists and find opportunity for others to join us. So
Right.
One of the things I think that's somewhat unique about Chicago, maybe New York has the same thing, is that there's a pretty concerted effort on behalf of those that are in the ecosystem to bring others in. What can we do to make it even easier? So the fact that Google relocates a pretty big office to Chicago, as does Yelp, as does, I believe, Angie's List, is an asset. The more companies that are actively creating and growing in the world of technology that we can have in Chicago, the better we all are. So Chicago Next is one of many entities that the government facilitates, but it's comprised of people in the private sector, and we're doing the best we can in these various entities to make it a more hospitable environment to people that might want to join.
It being an election year, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about 2016 and what we're facing in November. I'm curious to know, as a technologist, what do you see as being the biggest issues for tech in this year's election? What are the issues that
for the technology space?
Yes.
Well, I believe that the more, well, first of all, I think there's an opportunity for us as a nation to upgrade our bandwidth, upgrade our connectivity. We are far behind many other nations, which is hard to believe, but it's true. I think that the immigration issue of bringing more high-quality people to this country is one that's important to the entire technology space, and so I hope that there's progress made to make it easier. If you come here and are educated here, why not stay? There's so many other issues. part of the opportunity I see that might not be related to what the next president does or doesn't do is almost the responsibility, I hope, of technologists, data scientists, to help make the issues of this country more quantifiable and more visible. I don't believe that the average person in this country understands exactly what is at the root of the decision making and the decisions that put us in good or bad places as a country or a state or a city. And so, like the work that Mary Meeker did to take United States of America and turn it into USA Inc. And she wrote an analyst report, as an equity analyst would, but it was of our country. That was, to me, so insightful. Let's deconstruct what the problems are, which technologists uniquely have an ability to do. Right. Let's quantify how the problems have come to be, and perhaps give some visibility as to how they maybe can get fixed. That's a big opportunity, in my opinion, that defies party lines. It's more about transparency and logic. Like, if everybody can see the problem, I'll bet you we could find an answer a lot easier than we see now.
Maybe the next president should ask Mary Meeker to help on the CIO side or CTO side for the country. But no, seriously, speaking of candidates, as you look at the field right now, can you give me a sense of where you, again, speaking as a technologist, look at them and think, I think it would be really good for the country if candidate X were elected, were in the White House next year?
I'm going to stick with my not political comment, but I will say, so the answer is I don't have an opinion about, one that I want to share publicly about one candidate versus the other. I will say that the fact that Obama has created an office, or maybe there's always been this case, but I think having a CTO in the White House, right. I think having more data scientists and more technology facilitators in the branches of our government is a good thing. And the more data that's made available to put in a playground and a sandbox and let us figure out what it means, the better we can hack our way, we can sort of figure out some of these patterns that are underlying today's reality. But to me, it would be very interesting if whoever was in power really made everything transparent. I know people talk about it, but I'm talking about going all in. It's a logical next step, and I think it'll make us a better country.
We might have a chance to talk more about that, but I do want, in the last few minutes, to give folks in the audience an opportunity to weigh in with questions, comments. Are we going to, I don't think we're going to, are we going to go with microphones? Okay, go ahead. We do have mics available?
Yes, we do.
Oh, here they come. Let's just give those a second, because there are people who are listening via LiveGo who are not here tonight.
Hi. I have a question about technology and politics, as you were just talking about. What are the chances you see blockchain technology being used for voting in the next 15 years? And how do you feel about blockchain technology being used for any facet of government?
Well, the underlying technology of Bitcoin is so intelligent as a solution to so many opportunities or problems. And I think what I heard is that the majority of the voting machines that are going to be used in November are like 10 or 15 years old. It's just, how is that possible? So I hope that blockchain technology is applied mindfully in lots of places. I think the more we can reduce friction cost and friction in general in transactions, be it the act of voting or the act of trading money and for goods and stuff, the better we are. We're all here technologists. If you believe in entrepreneurship and technology, then the opportunities are everywhere around us. The question is, how do you overcome institutional opposition or reluctance to embrace change? It's threatening and it's scary, but that's the heart of our country. So blockchain is one of many things. It's like, how could we not be more open to it?
The other thing I was going to ask was about smart contracts. Do you think people are ready for smart contracts? Do you think it will become a part of society that's sort of like Bitcoin, starts in the obscure areas and then moves its way into the mainstream, or do you think it's very far out?
Smart contracts?
smart contracts, so using that same blockchain to exchange property or other things besides just digital money?
I think, well, so I'm not an expert at smart contracts, but I think that you're seeing, like my friend who, Dan Gilbert with Quicken, Quicken Loans, and there's an example where he's doing everything he can to use technology to enhance and facilitate the transaction. And at some point, already digital signatures are accepted by courts. How much further do we go? As far as we can. The more friction and transaction costs that we can reduce, that's the space for disruptors. Figure out where there's friction, where there's arbitrage, where there's inefficiency, and go after it.
Right here, the gentleman at the back.
Brad, thank you. I can't wait to see the day when we have an entrepreneur running both Chicago and New York again. And also to see Chicago and New York collaborate on building their venture ecosystems. So, Chicago and New York share a lot of attributes: density, proximity to really great core industries, and we produce as much talent as Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, does. There's got to be a more refined ingredient that will retain talent in Chicago and New York. You have a story. Andreessen left, you stayed. Can you find an ingredient in that story that might give us a telltale on how we can retain our talent and keep them here?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Look, the reason that Eric and I stayed in Chicago is because we're from Michigan, and so when you're from Michigan, the big city is Chicago. And the heart, I believe, of somebody who says, I'm going to the big city, is they want to be exposed to serendipity. They want to be exposed to new things, and a playground that's probably bigger, more diverse in every way than where they are. That's the big city to me. That's the urbanization, and why that's happening even more so. So what would be like the thread that motivated us to stay, if you will? It was not government incentive, and it certainly was not that it was easy. I believe market forces at some point will make the Valley, if you will, San Francisco and the Palo Alto area, so expensive to create a large pool of talent that the laws of the market will and the entrepreneurs are the people making the decisions that create the market. That there will be logical entrepreneurs who say, I can better, more efficiently, and more effectively build the team I need to build in New York or Chicago. The things we have going for us are intensity, culturally, cultural intensity, livability, cultural. It's funny. The cultural intensity is like the ethos, but then culture itself are things that we have in strong suit. Well, in New York, the best, and Chicago ain't bad. So we got great culture, and there's a community, a sense of community that is, of course, more true in the East Coast than the explorers on the West Coast. How do we make that more tangible? We just got to work at it. I mean, that's why Mike Bloomberg was so genius in his execution of his opportunity as a mayor, is because he was consistently articulate about wanting New York to be the place that you started your business at, and where you stayed if you're here. And that's where the government, without the money, just be an organizing force, a cheerleader, an instigator, and I don't know. But believe me, I think those of us here in New York and Chicago have a lot to gain if we can figure out the consistent ingredient that builds and further develops these ecosystems.
I read, I think on Lightbank's blog, that actually staff at startups tend to be paid higher in base salary than, relatively speaking, than in equity compensation. Do you find that to be in Chicago?
Probably. Well, that's probably true. Look, and there's probably a less developed appreciation for equity.
Right.
God, there's so much opportunity, and at the same time, I share the question of, like, how do you articulate it in a way that for the great, brilliant data scientist who's in Chicago or Champaign, thinking about what they're going to do, realize, you know what, for so many reasons, for the cost of living, for the cultural, great place to live. This is a place to be. I can make myself, but that's America. So at some point, I think things balance out, I hope.
Right here.
I have a product question about uptake. Do a lot of work with natural language generation technologies, so taking data that might come off of sensors and then communicating the reports in natural language as opposed to visualizations or graphs of some sort. And in doing this work, have found that the hard part is not the language generation. The hard part is finding a model that's generalizable across different manufacturing, construction, right, the industries that you're working in. So I just was wondering the split between professional services, custom model development, and then the generalizability of the product at uptake, and how you guys are balancing that and how that contributes to the business model.
That's a good question. Going to culture again, I mean, the cultural attributes of our data science competency is finding data scientists who are curious. Number one, first and foremost, not a rail expert, but a phenomenal data scientist who has a lot of curiosity and who has a short attention span. We're inviting people who basically say, I want to solve one problem this month, and I want to do something totally different next month because I'm interested in learning and expanding my competency. The thesis was that would result in unexpected cross patterns where learning one thing would influence another. That was a thesis that we strongly believed in, but at the beginning you believe it and then you prove it right or wrong. It's been proved right. So I'll give you an example. A modeling technique that we've used to inform the decision around what antibiotic a doctor in the hospital at the moment of decision making should prescribe to that patient. That modeling technique has been applied directly to making a rail locomotive smarter, period. So that's pretty cool. That sense of not just solving problems, but then going broader and creating this community of data scientists who are really, we're asking them to go above and beyond the problem and try to find the abstraction. It's happening. So it's part of the value of uptake is that we are not just in one industry, we are in many industries. And the broader we get, one might say, oh, that's going to dilute the model. Whereas my perspective is it strengthens in so many ways the technology platform. It strengthens the quality and size of our team, but it also informs data science in an interesting way. So it's happening.
I was curious to know on Lightbank if you could talk a little bit briefly about kind of how much more investing do you see your partners doing in the near term, and what are you looking for? What gets your partners most excited since they're the ones doing it and you're sort of working with uptake more?
There's some venture capitalists I know in the audience right now. I think just like entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, we're all entrepreneurs. We're all trying to learn and be better every day based on what we've learned from the past. And I'll give you our story and you can abstract it to others. We've learned now from the pattern of our experience. And so when you ask what are you expecting to do with Lightbank, the answer is not nothing. And the answer is not, the exact same thing we've done, before. We're more clear about what we are good at. We're more clear about what, in our book, a great opportunity looks like. And we're also more clear about how we think about inefficiencies that are worth solving. So just like when we start a business, it's because we can't not start that business. We've tried as hard as we can to not do it, and we've gotten to a point where we're convinced that it must be created. Similarly, to me as an investor, the act of trying to not invest and only investing when you really think it fits who you are as a group of value-added investors is something that we've probably refined over time at Lightbank. So it's gotten very interesting.
Do you see it ramping up in the coming years in terms of
Again, we don't have the same mandate
Right.
as a venture capital fund that's managing a big pool of LPs.
behalf of LPs,
so
right.
it's more opportunistic.
Right. Yes.
As the CEO of Uptake, you've decided to take the company into many industries. And doing that probably has created or will create some challenges. Can you talk a little bit about the struggles that you have had so far and how you're solving them and working with them?
I think that there's every entrepreneur who finds themselves in a situation where the idea that they had works is then faced with interesting opportunity. Then what? What do you do with something that works? Do you see it through with and the knowledge that if you go too wide, too fast, it's a detractor. So that probably goes to some of the learnings that we've had in the past couple decades. And in the case of Uptake, the decision to go after multiple verticals this early in our evolution is a mindful one. It's a decision that is directly informed by the sensibility of having a technology platform that delivers answers, and the fact that that technology platform is made better when it's tested under diverse industries and circumstances, so it gets stronger, and the fact that data science is a competency, it's a skill set that I believe gets stronger by virtue of being applied to different vertical spaces. So it's a very, it's a deliberate choice that we've made. And what are the challenges? Growing fast is not easy, and managing very talented people and being focused is something that requires, that's what a leader is supposed to do, is provide focus and clarity around the mission. And all that being said, I tell you the biggest challenge for us is the fact that we are approaching the verticals themselves with such speed that the partners and the industries themselves we're just moving at a speed that a lot of these bigger industries have not experienced comfortably. So the cultural integration of our we're getting this done quickly. And if it's not perfect, there's value in getting it done quickly and then perfecting it over iterations in time. That's a sensibility that is, of course, familiar and comfortable to most of our, most technologists, but it's one that is a more new approach to major industries. That's part of the challenge of building a business like Uptake.
You talked about leadership. One of your colleagues on Lightbank's blog wrote about when a recent hire, I want to say he spent more than 100 hours looking for that recent partner. It's a lot of time to invest. Can you offer any advice for any of us who are hiring managers on kind of do's and don'ts or some of the best practices when it comes to hiring well?
I'll try, but we all keep learning. The do's and don'ts are if you feel even remotely in your gut, if it doesn't feel good when you leave the interview or go home that night and think about the person you met, then it's not a fit. It's getting emotion out of the way and saying, as much as I need somebody to fill this spot at this moment, that person didn't feel right. Too many people compromise when it comes to hiring other leaders to surround them or colleagues in positions of real influence. And when you compromise on that feel for do they fit this culture, it's rare that talent can offset a cultural misfit. So a cultural misfit with a hugely talented person probably won't work. So what is your culture? What is important to this company in terms of the values and the things that make the company? And then does this person enhance or detract from our clear culture? That should be the litmus test. And if you don't feel good about it, then trust your gut.
Great. I think we have time for one more, so why don't we go to the gentleman at the back?
Brad, I think you have another story that could be really helpful to this audience. I've had Caterpillar as a customer. I've had HP as a customer, and they said, you know what, we want to work with you, but we hope we don't kill you. You have figured out at Uptake how to get really in deep with Caterpillar on a strategic partnership level, not just from an investment, but from a whole mind share as a company. Now, you had the credentials to do that, but all of us want to work with industry in the way that you've worked with Caterpillar. Can you share any of that story with us in a way that would be helpful to some of the young companies in the audience?
Well, I think that I'll tell you a story that I think speaks to my perspective on that question. I was, even though I'm not at all involved with politics, the governor of Illinois called me 5 or 6 years ago, way before Uptake was even an idea. And the governor said, I'd like you to be the chairman and create an innovation group or council or something. And my response was, I'm not, first of all, I haven't donated any money, and so I'm like, I'll consider it, but if I do it, I would want to do it my way, which would basically be very short meetings, very purposeful meetings, and we got to get stuff done. So it's not like a ceremonial sort of thing. If we're going to have an innovation council, let's get stuff done. He said yes. So off we went. And my thought was, what if we put together big companies, small companies, university, and government at the table? So the leaders of innovation, if you will, of these four, and venture capital. Let's get them around the table. Then what do we do with that table? We don't just waste time discussing, theories and stuff. I'm like, let's bring people in front of this unique group and let them each take 5 minutes to do anything other than ask for money. Ask for introductions, ask for something that would help and then there's a vetting process you could apply, and it became beyond dynamic. It was wonderful. So you take an hour becomes, 12 groups that come in front of you to explain what they're doing and what they need, how you could help them get something done. That's a win. Then I went beyond that. And then the idea that I had was, if every big company had a chief entrepreneurship officer, chief startup officer is what I wrote a column for Forbes, and I said, that should be a new title in corporate America. A person whose responsibility and role at these iconic major companies is to open the door and welcome entrepreneurs to call, to propose ideas, and to try to find ways to work with these big companies. If it was a more welcoming place, we would all know who to call, because we don't know who to call. That's the first step. Like, where are you going to go if you have a great idea for whoever? You don't know. That's a starting point, and we're not even there yet. So I got a lot, the story of Uptake and Caterpillar, I agree, is a unique one. I think and the important thing that we could solve, that's actually solvable, that could open up the doors for all of us as entrepreneurs, is tell us who to call. And ask the CEO to actually empower that person to start relationships in a way that could give people a break. Because that's what we're looking for in this country, is bring entrepreneurs into and integrate them with major iconic companies, and hopefully what that results in is better self-incubated opportunities within this great entrepreneurial nation, and major Fortune 500 companies who are self-perpetuating their longevity by virtue of their integration with diverse and disruptive ideas. So such a big opportunity. I wish that, and I'm hopeful that that chief startup officer concept is one that gets actually, executed, that it happens sooner than later.
Great. Brad, Keywell, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
I just want to bring up, before we close, I want to bring up Bill Marino, student ambassador from Cornell Tech.
Thank you so much, Tom. Like Tom said, I'm Bill Marino. I'm a Cornell Tech student. Typically, this is where our dean, Dan Huttenlocker, would give some closing remarks. The dean really wanted to make it tonight, but could not, so I will do so in his stead. About a month ago, they called and they asked me if I was interested in doing this, and I was thrilled. I said, of course. So they said, okay, well, Bill, maybe start thinking about what you might want to talk about. And I said, I already know. And they said, what? And I said, synthesis. And then there was a long pause, and I'm pretty sure they thought I was a few swipes short of a MetroCard, if you know what I'm saying. But then I continued. Synthesis it's the combination of different ideas or different elements into something new, right? And if you think about it, it's the recursive theme for tonight. This event is a synthesis between Cornell Tech and Bloomberg. And Bloomberg and Cornell Tech are themselves syntheses, right? Cornell Tech, it's a synthesis of engineering, business. Next year with our LLM program, law, Bloomberg is a synthesis of information, technology, business, media. And then last but not least, I'm a synthesis. I'm a lawyer, back in school, becoming a computer scientist. Why? Because I knew a lot of really exciting stuff was going to happen in this intersection of law and technology, and the leaders of this movement would be those who could draw on expertise in both realms and synthesize. The thing about synthesis is that it can lead to unexpected results that are often sublime. And that has already been my experience at Cornell Tech, actually. If you told me 4 months ago when I started that I would be speaking in London at the developers conference for a really hot software called Ethereum, or speaking at a law machine learning conference in Portugal, or speaking at MIT, I would have told you that you were a few swipes short of a MetroCard. But all of those things have happened, all because I drew on my growing engineer knowledge and my legal expertise and synthesized and brought all of that to bear on this little corner of technology that weirdly enough got mentioned earlier tonight, which is smart contracts. If you don't know what that is, come see either that guy or me afterwards. I will happily explain it to you, and I can tell people too. So the point is, my story, Bloomberg story, Cornell Tech story, they all show that synthesis leads to beautiful things and radical innovations. And I think the word Brad used earlier was serendipity, right? So let's keep synthesizing together, especially now that we have this excellent forum. On that note, stay tuned, because future speakers in this series are going to include Dennis Crowley and Jeff Glueck of Foursquare, Tim Armstrong of AOL, Kevin Ryan of Guild Group, and Megan Smith, the CTO of the US. That's amazing. So we have this room apparently until 8 p.m., so everybody please stay and mingle. We have some prospective students in the house tonight. Definitely come talk to me. And lastly, thank you all so much for coming out.